Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Mike from 1AAuto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And next time you need parts for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the front axle on this 2003 Nissan Frontier. Procedure is the same. We're going to show you the passenger side. Driver's side is the same procedure, and it's also the same for 98 to 03 Frontier, as well as 2000 to 2004 Xterra. And you're going to need a new axle from 1AAuto.com, jack and jack stands, 12 to 22 millimeter wrenches, as well as sockets and ratchet with an extension, needle nose pliers and circlip pliers, hammer and punch, several different size flat blade screwdrivers from large to small, Phillips screwdriver. You'll need a long pry bar. We actually use a 2x3, a pipe for extra leverage, 6 millimeter Allen socket or Allen key, and a torque wrench. Remove the front wheel and tire. If you don't have the benefit of air tools, loosen the lug nuts with the vehicle on the ground, then raise and secure the vehicle and remove the lug nuts the rest of the way, as well as the wheel and tire.
I'm going to place a long flat blade screwdriver in that brake rotor against that caliper bracket to keep resistance while I take off the 6 millimeter Allen heads in the end of that hub assembly. With that cover off, you'll notice that there's a circlip holding the axle in place. I'm going to use a pair of Circlip Pliers, and I'm going to press them so that the circlip expands, and I'm going to pull that collar out with it. And that's just going to help it pull off of the actual axle itself. You can see here how I'm sliding that circlip with that ring, and I'm going to use a little flat blade screwdriver to help me pry it off the that last indent there in the axle. Then I'm going to take them and put them aside. Now locate the two Phillips head screws, take those out, and I'll fast forward as I do that. Take a couple small flat blade screwdrivers, and on either sides of that big washer there, pry it out and put that aside. Go ahead and use another small flat blade and twist off that locking ring. It's threaded, so do it several turns counterclockwise, pull it off, and set it out of the way. Now we're going to locate the 6 12 millimeter bolts that hold the axle shaft to the CV joint. And I'm going to show you quickly how I'm going to use some leverage and lock that up so I can use my 12 millimeter without that spinning. So I've got that long flat blade screwdriver in there, and then I'm going to use a 12 millimeter wrench with a 13 for with the locking wrench method to unscrew those bolts. And as I'm removing them, I'm just going to by hand twist the CV joints so that I can access the others. And I'm going to go ahead and fast forward as I remove all 6 of those bolts.
We'll need to disconnect the upper part of the steering knuckle from the upper ball joint. So the first part of that is to remove the cotter pin. We're using a screwdriver and pliers to break as much of the cotter pin off as possible, and then we'll drive it out with a hammer and punch. You'll need a 22 millimeter wrench and another wrench to lock onto it. Gives you some extra leverage, and break that bolt free. Once you have that ball joint nut free, then you're going to want to put your jack underneath the suspension and support it. And once you have the nut all the way off, you actually want to thread it back on about 4 or 5 turns. The reason you take it all the way off is because you want it to come apart nice and easy once you break the ball joint loose. So take it all the way off, make sure the threads are nice and clean, and then put it back on 4 or 5 turns and maybe another 1 or 2 turns with the wrench. Is it basically on there, full set of threads now?
I'm going to lower the suspension there just a little bit, and I'm going to leave maybe a ½ an inch between the jack and the lower ball joint. And I'm going to pull that ABS harness out of the way. And you see where I'm pointing there is where you're going to want to hit with your hammer. Give it a good couple whacks to free it up. Now you can go ahead and jack it back up so that you can take the nut completely off. And go ahead and unscrew it. Now slowly and carefully let the jack down, and you'll see how it separates the spindle from the upper control arm assembly. At this point, now you can pull the axle shaft out. Here you can see the old part and the new part. You'll need to swap over that metal washer, but other than that, it's a direct replacement fit. Go ahead and feed the new axle in between the lower and upper control arms, and you're going to want to push the outer part of the axle into the hub assembly first.
Okay, at this point it helps to have a helper. Let the pressure off the lower control arm most of the way, and then push your spindle and brake assembly kind of back into alignment. You can see I've aligned the upper part of the knuckle with the upper ball joint, and then another person is working the jack right up into place. And then once you get the spindle up in there into the ball joint, then you can start that nut on. Here we're using a long piece of wood to put in there and press down on the control arm. That helps to keep the ball joint in place in the steering knuckle, and as we're pressing down, he's tightening up that nut for the steering knuckle.
Now you can go ahead and let the floor jack down slowly and carefully. Install a new cotter pin and bend the ears back. I'll fast forward as I do that.
Reinstall the 6 12mm bolts that hold the axle shaft to the transmission.
You're going to want to go ahead and torque with a 12mm swivel and extension your 6 bolts to roughly 40 foot-pounds, and you'll see I'm using that screwdriver to hold the axle in place once again.
Okay, screw on the threaded retainer clockwise until it's nice and tight, and then what you'll have to do is put the locking washer in there, kind of check to see where the screws are, or the holes for the screws are, and then back that retainer off slightly until you can get those screws in.
Go ahead and install the 2 Phillips head screws that you had taken out. Go ahead and fast forward as I do that.
Reinstall the hub locking ring, and then you'll put your circlip in place. Use the circlip pliers to expand it, push it on. You may have to pull the axle through from the back side and push it in with a small screwdriver to lock that circlip or C-clip in place, and then reinstall the hub and tighten those 10mm bolts up, and we tighten to about 10 to 12 foot-pounds. And we're getting to the home stretch here. Put the wheel back in place, hand thread the lug nuts on it first, and then tighten them preliminarily. And tighten the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds using a crossing pattern with the vehicle on the ground. We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.oneauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll-free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.